All right, and welcome to my first photo tutorial. This is sort of an idea that I've been playing around with for a while, and because of the great response that I've been receiving in my live Facebook photo Q and A's, I decided I'd give this a go and sort of walk you through my editing process and sort of what I look for, and maybe a few tips and tricks on black and white in the process. A lot of you have asked about editing and editing software and what I do, so I'm going to share that with you today. So as you can see here, excuse me, we'll get started. I've got a photo here that I took today of this lovely musician in Melbourne CBD, and I dropped it. Excuse me, I dropped a few coins in his case and asked if I could take some photos of him, and he was more than happy to. And he was very, very cool, super lovely guy, just kind of playing in the street. So I took a few photos of him, and as you can see here, I've got a few in the set, and I chose this one to work with today. So what I'm going to do is kind of take this photo from what it is directly out of the camera and into something that I would have as a finished product with my own work. So you can see right as we get started, you can already see that there is there's not really any dramatic, dynamic lighting happening. There is some lighting happening. You can see there's some light here on his forearm and on his guitar strap, and there's some overhead light happening here, and a bit of bounce light happening on his face here. So I'm really happy because I really didn't think there was a lot of light and shadows happening in this photo when I originally took it. But now I look back at it, and I'm actually really kind of pleased with the light dark balance here. So that's one thing I look at to start, obviously, and kind of see how that looks and sort of what sort of a mood this evokes for me. What I like is I always want a photo of mine to not only make the viewer feel something, but to really carry an energy of its own. So that's something that I'm always looking for, and I'm always trying to find a mood and a sort of feeling that I want the photo to portray. So I'm looking at this right now, and I really do have an idea of where I want to go, but I won't really know until I switch it over to black and white. So this is cool. You just come down here. Now what I'm using is Lightroom. It's Lightroom 5. I believe it is from the Creative Cloud app. I do highly recommend it. It's my go-to software. It's pretty simple to use. If any of you out there use Photoshop and have never used Lightroom, it's basically all the really cool photo editing parts of Photoshop, sort of condensed in its own thing, but also much better. So much more user-friendly in my opinion, and just easier to use. So this is my go-to. I'm going to go over down here, and I'm just going to flick this over to black and white, and you'll see right off the bat my photo changes. In the instant, the mood changes already, and I haven't even done anything. So I'll show you again. I'll go over here to color, and it brings it back, and you can see that this bright salmon kind of shirt and this aqua bag and this blue shirt really do take a lot of attention in this big red background here, which is interesting. And then I go back over to black and white, and there you go. So I really do get a vibe here, and I kind of feel like I want this to kind of be like a moody, yeah, no surprise. I want this to be like a moody sort of, lone wolf musician playing to a bunch of people who don't listen to him, or I don't know, playing a real sad song about a broken down world and everybody's too busy. I don't know, something like that. That's kind of where my brain goes. So I'm going to look at this, and first, right off the bat, the one thing that I'm going to do, because it's driving me crazy, is I'm going to play with my cropping. So I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to kind of adjust the frames. Now, I do really like to try to get the framing as close as I can to perfect in the camera. I don't want to have to rely on it later on. I do try to get the best shot possible, and in this case, I like to take, like as you can see here, take quite a few shots and find an angle and a lighting source and a point that I like, and then just sort of wait for the shot to sort of happen. So I like to frame it right off the bat. I don't like to use cropping too much as an after edit, as much as I'd like it to let me play a little bit more with the mood itself. And that's something I can cover in a later video, is how cropping can totally affect mood. But anyway, I'm rambling. So what I'm going to do here is I don't really like that these these things up top are on an angle and there's a little white bit showing. So I'm just going to kind of rotate that a little bit and sort of get that decently straight. Now I'm looking here and I can see that I'm cutting off his elbow and I'm cutting off a decent amount of his legs here, but I'm going to go ahead with it anyway and just kind of see how it goes. So it cut off a bit too much headroom. I think I was a little bit too overzealous with it. So I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to go for that again, and I'm going to be a little bit less aggressive with it, and I can always come back and play with that later. Okay, so there we go. That's better. It's a little bit straighter, and there we go. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to move forward, and I'm going to right off the bat play with initially my exposure, and that's the first thing I always go to is I can set the overall sort of tone and feel of the image. And what I like to do a lot of times is really see what it looks like across the board. I really don't want to close my mind to any option. As I've said before, it really is all about your vision and all about what you want your photo to say and what mood you want it to carry. There is no right or wrong way. This is just what I do, and it's I guess it's a little bit informative if you care to listen. So I got my exposure here, and I'm gonna kind of see what it looks like across the board. So I'm going real dark here, and that has its own sort of value if I were to go in and really tweak the lighting. But that's not what I'm looking for here. What I'm looking for is something a little moody, maybe right about there. So you can still get some details in the face. Maybe it's a bit too low, so I'll bump that up just a touch. There you go. So I've really kind of now accentuated those shadows in his shirt, which I really like. And now I'm going to come down here and I'm going to play with contrast a little bit and see what that does. And that just sort of, contrasts my lights and my darks and really makes, widens or shortens the gap between light and shadow. So I kind of like that there. It's quite nice. It's nice and clean. Now I'm going to come in with highlights and see what that does. So it's really mainly playing with the street and the sidewalk, as well as the clothing in the background that before we noticed was quite distracting. So I'm going to lower that a bit. I like that it's kind of bringing out the details in the background here. I kind of like that, and I feel like it's giving a bit of depth as well. Shadows is going to play an important role here, so I'm going to drop them and just see what that does, and it really adds a lot of drama to his face. But I'm going to bring that up a touch because I don't want his face, completely hidden in shadows. I want him to have some character. As I said, he was very lovely, and he had he had a lot of character in his face. Really, he had quite a few wrinkles, and he had a weathered face, and I rather enjoyed it. So I kind of like that right about there. Now whites, as we've mentioned already, was in the background and in that sidewalk there. It's also in things like his guitar pick guard and the bounce light on his face and his fingernails. Now I kind of like if I go really bright, you can see with that white slider, it sort of goes like bright summer playing in Paris almost to dingy city, and I kind of like somewhere in between. So I rather like that. And again, the point of this is that I can always go back and change it. This is sort of what I do is I kind of go through it all once and then I go back and I fine tune. And it's something that I would highly recommend if you have the time to do it. Blacks is going to play a very important role here, and that is going to carry the overall the dark weight, the mood of this photo. Now I am no stranger to dark blacks and white whites. If you know my work already, you know that I do love me some shadow and some drama. So I'm not afraid to play with the blacks a little bit here and really push them and really still get some depth in his face. And you can see here, the lower I go, he almost looks younger now. He almost looks, like more out of the 60s, whereas here he looks a little bit older and a little bit more weathered. So I'm going to drop that to right about there. Cool. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and play with clarity. Now clarity really refines and really enhances a lot of details, and you'll see that it's a very dramatic tool. I've always been a big fan of clarity. Now that I'm progressing in my learning and my style is adapting and evolving. I tend to use it a little bit less dramatically than I used to, although I still do love clarity. And you'll see here as I slide it up, it really changes the dynamic here of the photo. So, you'll see it brings out a lot of the details and it becomes more grainy and gritty, and that I really do like. Um, Although this does have its merit on its own, I'm gonna kind of bump this up a little bit. And that looks, yeah, that's, I'll bump it down just a touch. It's at plus 60. I'm gonna bring it down to maybe there, 37. That's about right. And you can see it's brought some grit and some grain here, but it's also accentuated a lot. So I'm pretty happy with that. So now we're going to go down here to the color sliders. And the cool part about this is that now I can really fine tune the color scheme in here. Now you may be asking what color scheme. It's black and white. Totally legit question. Although because the raw file here was a color file that I converted into black and white, basically Lightroom has now taken all of those values, those color values, and assigned them a black and white tone or a shade or a value of its own. So things that were orange I can still control, and things that were red I can still control, which adds a really, really great level of control and a dynamic to the photos. And that's one thing I think a lot of people miss or don't play with when they go black and white. I think they sort of limit themselves up here, which is not necessary. So I'm gonna come in here, and I know he had a bit of a darker tan. He had a very orangey, sort of reddish complexion, and he had seen a lot of sun. So I know that there's gonna be a lot of red and orange and yellow in his face. And since he is the main subject, that's what I'm gonna focus on first. So I'm gonna go orange because that generally is skin tone in most photos. It really does sort of alter the majority of skin tones. So I'm gonna start here and just sort of play with that and see how it's sort of lightening his face a little bit. And what I'm also looking at here is the guitar fretboard, and specifically the shadows in his hand here that I'm really, really, really enjoying. I really, see if I can get close up on that. I really like how that looks, and I think as its own side thing, that could be a photo on its own completely, but that's for another day. So I'll leave the oranges there, and I'll take the red here. Now I know that there's a lot of red in the background and his guitar was red, but I don't want to lighten it too much because I really do want everything about him to sort of have this sort of dark quality to it. So there, I like that. And then yellow I'll play with, and we'll see what that does. So that brings out some brightness in the pick guard, as well as some detail in the background, but not much. So I'm going to lower that a bit, and I know there's some yellow in the fretboard and the head of the guitar as well, and I'm going to numb that down. And you see the lower I bring the yellow, the more shadow kind of comes through on the pick guard there, and I rather like that. But if I push it too far, it'll look a little bit messy, so I'll keep it right about there. And then I go down here, and generally after red, orange, and yellow, which are the three that I find are the most important in my work, depending on where I'm shooting. Obviously, if I'm shooting a grassy field, then, green is going to play a massive effect. But I know in this photo that's not necessarily correct, so I'm just going to slide these up and down really quick and just see what it sort of does. It kind of picks up a detail on a sticker in his guitar, and some of the details in the background. So I'm just going to sort of leave that sort of neutral. Aqua, same thing. It's bringing down that woman's handbag, which is nice, so I'm going to lower that. And then blue, a lot of blue in the background, so I'm going to lower that as well and see. There we go. And then purple and magenta, there you go. They usually have quite a few. They usually appear in quite a few places that you didn't really think they would, so we'll bring that down a bit, and magenta, we'll bring that down a touch. Okay, so there we go. So I've done the basic edits here. Now one thing that's sort of fun about this is that now I've got this sort of vibe to it, and I sort of go, okay, it's sort of telling me a story now, and I kind of like that. So I'm going to come back in here, and I'm going to play with exposure, and that's one that generally is the most important second time around, because now that all the details here, all the lighting and everything that I've corrected is in, now the exposure will sort of change the overall mood. And now what I'm going to do here is really, I'm going to play with that and lower it down, and I rather like that. So I kind of like that. It's maybe a touch dark, so I'm going to bump it up just a bit. There we go. And yeah, I kind of like that. So we're getting some bounce light here in his face, and the beanie is still showing quite a bit. Yeah, I like that now. So I'm going to come back into highlights and see what that gives me. And now that's kind of upping the background a bit. I don't know if I like that. I think I might. Kind of like it right about there. And now whites are going to play with again, and that looks sort of is an overall fade kind of feel to the photo. So if I do that, it sort of gives it this sort of kind of film quality. But I'm going to bring it up just a bit because I do like that light, specifically on his forearm right now. And then blacks again will come in here and really nudge those around and really see if that can set up the final tone here. And let's see. Yeah, no, I kind of like that. I think that's pretty good. And I'll come back again and I'll play with the reds and sort of fine tune a few things. Now I really do want a bit more shadow in his face. I think that's a little bit better. And then I'll lower the shadows again and really, there we go. And I'll up the orange a touch. I find that it's often a teeter-totter now when I kind of move back and forth. It's, lower the shadow, get some darkness, and then up the skin tone to see what sort of effect that gives me. And you know what? I do enjoy that. I'm alright with that, although I'm still struggling with the lighting. I sort of feel like maybe I can make it a bit darker. And maybe up the contrast a little bit. And maybe that'll sort of give me what I'm looking for. Yeah, that's not too shabby. There we go. I'm using a Wacom tablet and a pen, so it's a little bit finicky sometimes. There we go. And let's play with the clarity again and see what that gives me, just for fun here, because that's what this is all about, right? So, yeah, no, I bumped up the clarity a bit more than I had last time, and I'm going to lower the exposure. And, yeah, no, now I'm sort of getting the mood that I'm kind of feeling here. Lonesome guitarist out in the harsh world. There we go. Yeah, no, I like that. I kind of like where that's going. Yeah, so let me just kind of sit back here for a second and take a peek. Alright, so I'm looking at this, and I think I'm just going to nudge this cropping just a little bit more to straighten out that upper line. Yeah, no, I like that better. And one thing I'm finding is really distracting is this sort of light spot or dust speck here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to kind of take this little spot heal brush thing here. And I'm going to zoom in here. And I'm just going to get rid of that. And what this does is it's just going to take the area that I select, and it's just going to kind of clone it with the closest possible thing. Or whatever I suggest if I want to go for a certain effect. So once my slow computer catches up, there we go. I'm just going to select it, and it automatically gives me another point close to it to select. So I'm going to say, yeah, that works for me. And there it goes. So zoomed out now. And you know what? Yeah, I rather do like where this has gone. I'm gonna come back in with a shadow and just up it just a slight little bit. No, I don't like that. I'm now gonna lower it, and lower it even more than it was originally, just for shits to see what this does. And there we go. So I'm rather happy with that. What I'll end up doing is now I'll save this and I'll come back to it, in a couple days and kind of take a look at the whole set again. And I'll end up fine-tuning this a bit more. I'll probably end up taking this maybe into Photoshop just to fine-tune a few of the lights and darks. But overall, I'm pretty pleased with this, and I say that as I keep tweaking. And that's what I love about this, is the ability to keep playing. It does have a lot of versatility, and don't be in such a hurry to get a perfect product right away. These tools are very powerful and they're very diverse. And you can really find a style of your own just by playing and seeing what you know, what does this do? What does this do? You know, what does this do? That's the only way you're really going to learn. You know, and you'll find that you'll come back and keep tweaking. And, you know, my eyes right now love this, you know, but in 2 days, my eyes might come back and go, you know what, that's too dark. You know, or, you know what, this guy's takeaway container is sort of distracting. And it is. You know, so, you know, don't rush yourself. I do like that it is it's a craft. And while you know, you can do a quick edit like I've just done in a pretty quick amount of time, you know, don't rush yourself. Don't feel the need to. Get used to not only the software and your camera and your equipment, but also get used to yourself. Get used to what you like, and really don't push yourself to try to be a certain way. You need to let yourself sort of be the style that you are, and whatever naturally comes. I think that's very important. Everybody has their own sort of look and style, so, you know, play around, find something that works for you, and don't give a shit what anybody else says about it. So that's that. That's my first tutorial. That's me walking you through how to take an image right out of the camera and change it into something that, you know, I would probably put in my store, and change it into a really dynamic photo. Those are my steps. That's my process. That's my tips and tricks. If you like this video, let me know. Give me a like or a comment. You know, give me feedback. I'm always open to it. And if, you know, if these are things that you'd like to see more of, then please let me know. They're a lot of fun, and I'd be really happy to do them. So until next time, thank you very much. There is the final product. You've seen it here first, and well, thanks for stopping by. I'll see you soon. Cheers.